What would happen if you retire from GEPF before age 55? Now, this could be for various types of reasons. Perhaps you are frustrated with the amount of stress. Maybe it's hard for you to keep up with the changes that have taken place within government. Or perhaps it just could be a health issue. Your health is just not allowing you to continue. Or maybe you just have this gut feeling that it's time to move on to something else. Now, what would take place if you had to retire from GEPF before age 55? Now, I'm Devon Naika, and I help GEPF members live the best life possible with the money they have by helping them make their most important decision, which is whether you should retire or resign from GEPF. Now, in this video, I'm guiding you on everything that you need to know to understand the basics about what would take place if you had to retire before age 55. So let's get started. Now, there are a few things that you want to pay attention to here. And as always, we're going to go through this step by step. So watch the video the first time around to get an understanding of it. And thereafter, you can watch the video using your GEPF statement so that everything starts to make more sense again when you're using with your specific information. Now, the first thing that I want you to pay attention to is just in terms of values within GEPF. Now, I'll guide you along your GEPF statement shortly, but you want to bear in mind that GEPF is a defined benefit fund, which means everything is based according to a formula, right? And the formula then dictates the amounts or determines the amounts that you're going to see inside of your GEPF statement. So let's have a look at a GEPF statement, and then I'll tell you the things that you want to pay attention to. So you'll notice on this particular statement, now all the information is blocked out, obviously to protect the personal information. But at the top of the statement, you'll see estimate of benefits as at a particular date. So on your statement, you're going to get an estimate. Try and get this estimate as the date that you are leaving. So for example, if you were leaving, well, this is past 2018 now, but let's say you're leaving at the end of the month, right? So then you're going to get a statement from GEPF as at the end of the month. If you're leaving in 6 months' time, you'll get a statement as at that date. They can calculate it for you in advance because, again, it's all calculations, right? It's based on formulas. So you can ask them for the statement now, but as at a certain date in the future. Now, the reason that you want to do this is that will give you an idea as to what the figures will be at that moment in time, right? Which means if you look at this statement, it's as at 31st of December 2018. So certain information is accurate here, right? Like the ill health, the death in service, that's accurate. The resignation benefit is accurate as at that time, right? It's more or less the figures as at that date. What's not accurate is your retirement figures. So I want you to pay careful attention because maybe you've heard that there's a penalty if you had to leave before or leave early from GEPF, and this is how you can determine that. So notice the figures here. This is normal retirement, and it's got the monthly pension, it's got annuity amount, and it's 28,386. The lump sum gratuity, 1.2 million in this particular member statement. And notice the numbers here, right? You'll see it says 9, 10, and 11. Now, I want you to read points 9, right? So let's start off here, which is where it says normal retirement. And let's go take a look at what does it say for point 9, right? Now, notice it says normal retirement age is defined in terms of GEPF's rules as age 60. As age 60, right? As per your conditions of service. These benefit calculations are estimated and assume that you will retire at 60, which means GEPF is telling you that the calculation that's done here is as at age 60, right? It also goes on further to say if you are older than 60, then your retirement benefits are calculated up to age 65. Now, if you choose to retire before you turn 65, your estimated benefits as reflected in the statement will be adjusted. And the same applies to age 60, right? Meaning, in the beginning, if you are not yet 60, GEPF is calculating as at age 60, right? They're forward projecting it. If when you get to 60, they're going to forward project to age 65. So let's go have a look at this because this is a very, very critical element for you to understand, right? Because this adjusts what you know, right? So let's assume right now, you're gonna list your current age, and I'm gonna use an example because the video is all about you if you want to retire before age 55. So I'm using an example to say that you are now age 50, right? So you can again use the video the second time around when you're watching this, you can put in your age to start to calculate the figures. Now, what it means is GEPF is then calculating your figures at age 60, which means whatever you're seeing on your statement, the retirement value more specifically, right? So the retirement value in terms of income as well as the gratuity, both are calculated to age 60. Now, this is the problem. If you are 55 or 50 and you want to leave, right? You're before 55 and you want to leave, the figures are not accurate because the figures are calculated in the future. So the first thing that you need to do is you've got to get in touch with your HR to say, look, these figures are calculated to age 60. Can you give me figures to the age that you want to leave? So if you want to leave at age 50, then you're going to ask them to figures to age 50. If you want to leave to age 55, then you ask them to give you figures to age 55, right? So whatever age that you want to leave, ask them to do the calculation for you. So that way you have an understanding. Technically, if you look at it, right, it's not really a penalty. It's just that GEPF is showing you, hey, this is what your value will be when you are 60 years old. Maybe it's just not explained properly, but they're just showing you the value at age 60. And now that you want to leave earlier, before age 60, they now need to calculate it, right? Because the system's structured in a different way. So they've got to calculate it to tell you, okay, if you are leaving now at this point, this is what you're going to be. I hope it makes sense. That's a key element that I want to share with you in terms of this. And next, I want to tell you something very important from a tax perspective, right? So it means that the figures that you're going to see on your statement are going to be adjusted. Now, why I want you to get this thing right is there are often members who leave earlier, assuming that they're going to get this value, right? So if you look at your GEPF statement, let's just say, again, you are 10 years away from 60, these figures are not accurate. So if you plan your budget around receiving these amounts, when in actual fact you're going to get a lower amount, it can throw you off, and it can be disastrous because you might not have enough money. There might be tax consequences that were not taken into account. It can be absolute disaster, right? So you want to prepare yourself in advance before you commit into the decision. By you taking the time to watch the video and also to do the exercises that I'm sharing with you here, it just empowers you so you can make a more informed decision about whether you need to leave at that time or whether you actually have to just, stick it out for a bit longer. Now, before you head off, I want to guide you on something critical, which is in terms of tax, right? So I spoke to you in terms of the first element, and that element is basically what would happen from a calculation perspective. You know that your exercise is to go and ask your HR or contact GEPF, get figures as at the date that you are actually leaving, right? So then you know exactly what you're working with from an income perspective, what you're working with from a retirement perspective, the lump sum gratuity. Now, notice in this video, I'm going to be talking to you on retire. I'll do a separate video for you, what would happen if you had to retire before age 60. I'll do a separate video for you on resignation. What would happen if you resign before 55? What would happen if you resign before 60? Because everything changes, right? Based according to these calculations and also based according to tax. So quickly, I want to share with you what takes place from a tax perspective now. And on the tax side, we specifically referring to the gratuity here, right? Now notice, as I said, this is before 55, before age 55. Now what SARS does from a tax perspective, when you are before age 55, is they would use a table that is linked according to that. So let me bring up a tax guide for us so that we can understand it. Remember, I'm using the tax guide that was applicable at the time of me shooting this video. Make sure that you're getting the accurate tax guide again according to the time period that you are leaving, right? So there are two types of tax tables that you want to pay attention to. The first one here says retirement fund lump sum withdrawal benefits. That's what we're going to be working on, right? Notice for this particular table, the first 25,000 is what's tax-free. See, 0% of taxable income for 25,000. Now, what you might have heard of is this table, which is retirement fund lump sum benefits. And this says 500,000, and the first 500,000 is tax-free. Now, what I want to share with you, critically important, so make sure you remember this. This is only, here's the fine print, if you have attained age 55. So you can only access the 500,000 tax-free if you have attained age 55. If you are below age 55, it's not, SARS is not seeing it as a retirement. They are seeing it as a withdrawal, right? So you are withdrawing this capital before age 55. Therefore, in that case, you have 25,000 that's tax-free, not the full 500,000 tax-free. So please be extremely careful of this one, because again, once SARS issues a tax directive, there's no way to reverse it. So let's look quickly at what your options are from a tax perspective. I'll head over to the iPad so that I can explain it. Now, you still have capital that sits inside here, which is with GEPF, right? And you have the option to move this to an approved fund, right? Now, these are your two choices. You could either move to an approved fund, or you could take it out in cash. Now, if you took this money out in cash, you need to be extremely mindful that you're going to be taxed, right? And you're going to be taxed according to the table I just showed you, which means you only get 25,000 tax-free, right? It's just a very, very small amount. You're not going to get the 500,000 tax-free. There's also more tax that comes in later on, right? Meaning if you have a retirement annuity and at age 55, you decide to retire from it, SARS takes into account the fact that you've taken out some tax here, right? So please be mindful, get the tax planning done early. If you are moving over to an approved fund, that means you're saving on the tax, right? You structure this well, you're then saving on the tax. Now, when you are sitting in the approved fund, this is when you can gain access to your 1/3, right? So you can access up to 1/3 in cash. But notice here, again, that is subject to tax. So again, you want to be mindful. If you are accessing before 55, you only have the 25,000 that's tax-free. If you're accessing after age 55, then you've got a larger pool of capital available because you have 500,000 tax-free. Now, the balance of the money which sits in the approved fund needs to be invested, right? This is your 2/3 capital. And this is where you're going to have to invest. The problem is within the insurance companies, the product to pay you an income usually starts at age 55, right? Which means it puts you in a bit of a predicament. So you've got to analyze your options extremely carefully before you make the move, right? If there's a way that you can sustain yourself, meaning if you are moving away from GEPF into another job that allows you to sustain yourself, then you can move into the approved fund, keep the money in there until you're age 55. If you still need access to this money, then you've got to see how can you manipulate this just to carry yourself through to age 55, which is when you can start to access the income options and a variety of other elements, right? Remember, you could access all of it in cash, but again, this is going to be taxed. So this video is covered for you what would take place if you had to retire from GEPF. You know your exercise. The first step for you, we'll do a quick recap. You need to go contact GEPF. The calculations are projected in future, meaning it's at age 60. You want to tell them to give you the calculation, what would happen from if you had to retire at the age that you want to leave, what's going to be your income, what's going to be the lump sum gratuity. Then you want to pay careful attention on the tax planning. Remember, as I shared with you, the two types of tax tables that SARS uses. Please remember to use the latest tax guide when you're working with it. There's the withdrawal table and then the normal retirement table, right? One in this case was offering 25,000 tax-free and the other offering 500,000 tax-free. So you want to make that decision as well, bearing in mind that if you take it out in cash, the tax is going to be quite severe. If you are going to be moving to an approved fund, it helps you to save the tax. But the moment you start to release money from the approved fund, again, it's subject to tax, right? And same thing. If it's before age 55, you know which table is going to be used. And again, a different table if it's after age 55. So I want you to comment below, share with me how you found access to the video. Has it been helpful understanding this concept? And if you are leaving before 55, if you're comfortable, share with me in the comments what's motivating you, right? If you're needing some additional support, then I encourage you to send across an email to us so that we can understand your specific set of circumstances and see how best to guide you. Now, I'm always shooting videos in order to help you make the most important decisions when it comes to your GEPF fund. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you're able to get access to these videos as soon as we produce them. And remember to give me a thumbs up if you found the video to be helpful. I'll see you on the next one.